everybody, and welcome to this week's Cruise Chat. I'm Kathleen Penner, owner of Plenty of Sunshine Travel, and today we're doing things a little bit differently. As you know, if you've been to my channel, if you've subscribed to our channel, you see I meet with a different cruise line every single week. This week, I'm actually meeting with my host agency, the president of Cruise CEO. So I have Caroline here with me, and she was just on the Celebrity Edge, I believe. So we're going to be talking about what it's like to cruise right now with everything going on in the industry, and hopefully we'll give you a first-person perspective. Pardon me. So over to you, Caroline.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me onto the YouTube channel. This is fantastic. Really excited to be here and super excited to be able to share a little bit of my own personal experience when I sailed on the Celebrity Edge. We went on July 17th, so we actually were on the third sailing out of North American waters, which was great. And very exciting to be back on board, and really just gave me such such a great insight into actually seeing the protocols that everyone's been talking about in full kind of range of everything that's moving. So very exciting. But before I kind of dive into that, I thought I would share just a little bit of information about kind of what we've gone through and kind of just almost like a state of the industry kind of review. And then I'll go through some of the information as it relates to my particular sailing.
Great.
So let's address the elephant in the room. It's always good. Hold on. Can you see my screen okay? I just wanted to double check. Okay. Because I had a little message there. Okay. So it's always weird to start a cruise presentation with an elephant, but the reality is there is no doubt that, there's a lot of misconceptions. There's a lot of media portrayal as it relates specifically to cruise, and there always has been, but it's certainly at an amped up level these days. And there's no doubt in anyone's mind that this entire pandemic of COVID-19 has truly hit the travel industry harder than, quite frankly, anybody understands.
Right.
And on top of that, cruise has certainly been demonized more than any other segment in the entire travel industry. And, while it's easy to focus on cruising as, one particular segment because it's fairly high profile, but also because of the transparency of the reporting requirements and the standards that each of the cruise lines are tasked with and must adhere to. The fact is there is more reporting, and we hear about little outbreaks, and we have for years and years, and COVID-19 certainly has not changed that, but it's amplified it. But the reality is, cruising is neither the source nor the cause of COVID-19. And what's really different about cruise compared to other type of vacations in the industry is that there are no other sectors that have such stringent reporting requirements. And then, certainly on top of that is the presence on board of the doctors and nurses that are there for the surveillance aspect as well. And I think out of all of that, it certainly allows the cruise world, or even the world outside of cruising, just to know more information about exactly how COVID-19 has impacted cruise ships, more so than any other segment, like I had said. And, the meticulous protocols that they have to go, as well as the transparency, certainly don't lend themselves to a higher frequency of infection. What it does do is lend itself to a higher report of infections. And I think that was, something that I really wanted to address right out of the gate is, look, we've been dealing with this. We know what the perception of cruise was like before COVID-19 for non-cruisers, and it certainly elevated and amplified. But the reality is, Since 2020, there have been ships sailing all around the world.
Mhm.
And in fact, according to CLIA, which is the Cruise Line Industry Association, has a variety of CLIA members. We are one of them. And I know, Kathleen, you're part of CLIA as well on an individual basis. There's been 1 million passengers plus crew that have
Mhm.
sailed in more than 10 major cruise markets in parts of Europe, in Asia, in the UK, and of course, since July 2020, the North American market welcomed back cruise ships as well, and really truly leading the protocols in the industry today. I had been speaking to a friend of mine that's actually sailing this week, and she said, do you know that since August, this particular cruise line had done 200,000 tests on board, because this particular line, their protocols are they test every day. And out of that 200,000, there have been 31 positive cases.
Wow, that is such a small percentage.
It is such a
Mhm.
small percentage, but if anybody was out there thinking there are 31 cases on a ship, right,
Mhm.
it just kind of blows up that whole messaging.
Right.
And having had the opportunity to now sail, I can really again attest to the protocols that are on board and the fact that they are working since. So all of the ships that are run under the CDC, as well as those that are not, so CDC oversees the ships sailing in North American waters,
Mhm.
specifically out of the US. And then we have our obviously, excuse me, Asia, UK, and other European countries. But regardless of the CDC impacts or not, each of the cruise lines have adapted their protocols to be fairly consistent with each other, as well as right across the board, regardless of the trade destination that they're in. So each of the cruise lines have been operating with reduced capacity, as well as strict health and safety protocols. Buffets are no longer self-serve.
Mhm.
Tables are more spaced out. Activities, for example, have fewer participants, as well as the reduced contact. But more than that, they've also implemented a ton of contact tracing while they're on board.
Mhm.
Hand sanitizer stations have always been prevalent on ships, but now even more so. And depending on the line, the majority of crew, as well as customers, are required to wear masks on board, depending on what the situation is. So if I'm in an elevator, I would need to put a mask on, but if I'm sitting in the restaurant, I don't need that. If I'm sitting by the pool, I don't need it.
Right.
So just depending on the areas on the ship that you're actually kind of moving through all of those different zones, various mask requirements are in place.
Okay.
And then, of course, since I've traveled, so when I traveled in July, there was not any requirement for pre-board testing. And
Mhm.
now most of the cruise lines, certainly sailing, the ones that we are selling, are now requiring a negative COVID test to be able to board.
Mhm.
Plus, the majority, 95, if not 100% of passengers on board are required to provide proof of vaccination.
Okay.
The crew doesn't leave the ship. That's
Mhm.
another important part. So when I'm vacationing in Mexico and the lady who is serving me dinner or bringing me a drink or cleaning my room, or the gentleman, they leave in many cases to go home to see their families.
Mhm.
So the crew on board ships, they're actually truly living in a ship's bubble. They test them every week
Mhm.
just to make sure, because obviously, breakthrough cases we've known now can happen,
Right.
but they're not permitted to leave port, or leave the ship when they're in port. So, typically they would have an afternoon off to go and explore St. Thomas and pick up
Mhm.
some sundries and get some of their essential shopping done. That doesn't happen anymore. Everything is shipped in for them
Mhm.
on turnaround days. So I think, again, that's a very important note to mention, because no one's really talking about that, is that bubble of the fact that the crew's not leaving and interacting with anyone that is unvaccinated.
Right.
But other than all of the protocols that are put in place,
Mhm.
for the most part, cruising today is very similar, and the operation is remarkably similar to what it was before COVID. And that for me was a big surprise when I went on the Edge. I didn't anticipate the normalcy of it all. And you know what, I'm going to hold that. I'm going to
Okay.
hold
Yeah.
that thought because I'm going to go into that in a little bit.
Great.
So before we do that, I wanted to have a quick look at some of the trends that we're seeing. So this, of course, right now um, is really kind of right across the board, regardless if you're in the US or the Canadian market or the European market. There are four top trends that are emerging. Shorter booking windows. So people are perhaps deciding to take a cruise in the next 2 months, which is normally never heard of unless you're in a port city. And then your window gets even shorter than that. So we normally see anywhere from 6 to 8 to 12 to 24 months in advance for bookings. And now we can see bookings and recognize that within 2 months of departure. People are perhaps shying away from a ship that has 4,000 passengers typically and going to a ship that maybe has 1,500, or even going into a ship like a river cruise where it's even smaller with 176. So out of that, we're really seeing a good trend towards more of a luxury type of vacation. So our luxury ships typically offer and lend themselves well to social distancing at the best of times. And again, with all of those enhanced protocols. But we're hearing from all of our small ship partners, as well as river cruise partners, that their business is outpacing where they were sitting at in 2019 for forward bookings going into 2022 and beyond, which is positive.
I agree with you for that. I think small ship cruising is, pun intended, the wave of the future. I think it's, really you can just space yourself out from everyone else and you get to know everybody on board, and it's much more intimate cruising experience. And I think people will find that they enjoy that a lot more too.
Yeah, definitely. Now, that's not to say that a passenger that typically, or a ship that typically carries 4,000 passengers, when it's at 50% capacity, it's at 2,000, right? So there's still an abundance of space that's on there. But as people are starting to plan forward, that's certainly something that's coming up in conversation is what's the size and what's the capacity of people that this will hold. We're also, and I should have added this in, we're also seeing balconies. Being typically when you sell a ship or when you launch a ship, that's a hard one, ship for sale, you start at the top. So it goes right away on, if there are, 100 and odd days of a world cruise, the very first staterooms to go will be the suites.
The suites, yes.
And then it goes down to the inside or interior staterooms, and then it jumps to balcony. So we're seeing more people gravitating towards balconies, just on the off chance, God forbid, something happens, they feel like they will have a suitable stateroom to be able to hold up if needed.
Yes, absolutely.
The other thing as well is the longer sailings. I spoke a little bit about the worlds. So we're seeing world cruises sell out in 24 hours. We have not had a world cruise. We had 2019, obviously 2020 didn't happen, obviously 2021, but people have been aching to get back out there and to experience the world again, and they haven't been able to. So as a result, maybe their budget is still sitting there for their sailings or their vacations in 20 and 21, and are now applying that towards perhaps a lengthier. So instead of going for a week, they're going for 2 weeks. Instead of going for a 30-day, they're going for a 90-day. So we're really, again, seeing the adoption of that from our cruise line partners. I'll use Amma Waterways that, they stitch together, the 7 journeys, where I can't remember off the top of my head how many days that is. But really kind of, reacting to the trends that they're seeing by introducing those longer sailings as well. And then, of course, isolation has separated so many people and so many families that have not been able to see each other and to have any of the celebrations that are happening. So that group travel component is certainly a huge trend that we're seeing more than ever before, where it's families and friends that are coming together to do do-overs. So, it's a do-over of a 40th birthday or a 50th wedding anniversary, where now there's 45 family members that are all coming on board to celebrate together. And then obviously with, we have our regular type of cruisers as well, but these 4 trends are certainly emerging higher than what we see the individual booking. And the reason for that as well is, some of the incredible opportunities right now. So there's been certainly a message to plan ahead to capture the best offers. We've seen normally in January and February, which is often referred to in the cruise industry as wave season.
Mhm.
So as long as I've been in the industry, we've known it started as 2 weeks after school goes back. And for those 2 weeks, every single cruise line's phones would be jammed. And then that went into wave month, where January, we were seeing an increased amount of calls, and now it's into February. So from that January, February, early March timeframe is now referred to as wave season. And that's typically when we see the best offers and the best promotions that are in the market.
Yes.
Well, the offers and the promotions that were in the market today, going ahead into 2023 and soon to be 2024, are unlike anything we've seen before. There are layers and stacks of benefits and value adds that are being put on by each of the cruise line partners to be able to assure the guests, like, not only do you have the best cancellation policy, but you also have the best offers, and enticing people to come back to cruising, which is working in everyone's favor, as we know.
Mhm.
So what is it like to sail today? So as I had said earlier, I actually had a lot of expectations as I went on to the Celebrity Edge, and I really wasn't sure what to expect. I wasn't sure if I was going to love it. I wasn't particularly excited. I thought it was, it's a lot to travel today. But that being said, it was important for me to get back on, just to see, is what they're saying actually happening on the ship? And I was really surprised, and often throughout the week caught myself I traveled with my sister, saying, I can't believe how normal this feels, because you almost expect it to not be normal.
Right. Yeah.
And it was normal. And it actually, it was the strangest feeling, because life at home wasn't normal. We were still, and still are today, wearing masks at home. And at that point, when I was sailing on those first we didn't have any mask mandates. So, it took a few days to kind of ditch that security blanket that we've become very accustomed to. And then it was like, this is normal. It was unbelievable to me, that they were still able to put on full programming, have everything open
Mhm.
under the situations that we're in.
Yeah, and it's so nice to see people's smiles and to see their faces,
Oh,
and it's just, oh, you don't know how much lip read until you can't. So it's really great to see
absolutely.
that. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, that's so true.
Mhm.
But before setting sail, and it certainly, travel today is a personal choice. There may be people that, I'm pretty sure my husband thought I was crazy going out and doing an early sailing. He obviously knows what my job is, and sometimes you just got to do some things.
Mhm.
But it wasn't without its worry and without its anxiety of, do I have all of the right information? So my first tip before you even set sail is to pack your patience. There were massive hours and hours long lineup going through security and customs in Toronto, for example. There are no Nexus lines as your preview lines to go into security, as there normally are. If you're an elite member with Air Canada, as I flew on, they didn't have any of those priority lines. So when you see a lineup snaking off, from the majority of the terminal, with people waiting to get just through security, but it's also, even before you get to the airport, what test do I need? How do I get the test? Where do I get that test? Figuring out what the protocols are on board, and realizing that they could change at any moment.
Mhm.
And what you had thought you were getting may be very different than what you actually are getting. And really tying and marrying those both together with the importance of working with a travel advisor. So myself, being in the industry for 25 plus years, this was around, I'm counting it as my 81st. I know I've lost a few. It's not like I'm not well traveled,
Mhm.
but going through the process of figuring out by myself, okay, what test do I need? What this, what that, how do this, what vaccine certificates, where do I get those certificates
Mhm.
from? it really adds an extra element of stress and anxiety before you're even on the ship. And really, I reached out to some advisors that I know that had been in and out of the States, and can you just check for me, is this actually the correct information that I'm finding? And thank goodness that I had those travel agents to reach out to, because then I'm like, okay, I'm good. Which was really fantastic. But
it's good to get that assurance that, okay, I've got everything I need.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because navigating that through all of the different websites and going through the CDC and then looking on Cruise Critic, which may or may not have the right information, and trying to interpret what the cruise lines are saying, which is different than what you're finding. It is a web, but that's the beauty and the value that a travel advisor brings. And quite frankly, is the most important tool that you can travel with today is really having that travel advisor in your back pocket, a real live person. So this was me kind of getting on. I was super excited to get on the planes and kind of came up with, okay, what are the 3 A's? So the 3 A's are, first of all, my attitude. I just had to roll with it. I can sometimes be a fairly high-strung person. I like things in order. I had papers flying everywhere, from insurance to the vaccine certificates, whatever it was that I needed. So I was like, okay, I got to do my attitude. I have to do my antigen test, and I need to have that attestation form. So all of these pieces, as you know, Kathleen, are the pieces that you bring and that value that you have as well. But the other one on that doesn't go with the A is the excitement. I was so overjoyed to be able to get on the flight. It was a very easy and streamlined process for a direct flight from Toronto into Fort Lauderdale. And it was, I had no issues whatsoever on the flight. And I thought maybe I'd be a little bit weary of being, in a tin can with so many people. But I was just so overjoyed to be on a plane. I couldn't even tell you if the plane was full. I was just super excited and in my little bubble of where I was
and
at.
I'm sure you weren't the only one. You could probably feel the excitement on the flight as well.
Yeah, absolutely. There's often not clapping on Air Canada, but there for sure was clapping when we landed. They're not known for clapping. And then, of course, we were able to board. So these are just some of my snaps. I adore Captain Kate. She's just an absolute huge mentor for so many people in the nautical side of the cruise industry. And the ship itself was just absolutely spectacular. So we did an itinerary where we sailed out of Fort Lauderdale into Nassau. I think that's where this picture was taken. And then we went to St. Thomas and then St. Martin. But I'll go through it in a few pictures here. I think I've got of what the port situation is like as well. But on board, like I said, things are very normal. So I wanted to pick a bit of a contrast here. So I don't know about you, but I have full intentions when I go on ships. I'm going to take my running shoes. My running shoes have been all over the world. They very rarely actually do anything except maybe go for a walk. So, they have a beautiful gym. I did do a tour. My running shoes did not spend a lot of time there. But one of the great things here is you can't really see it from that picture, but they have the stations blocked off. So you can't go, treadmill to treadmill to treadmill. It's every other treadmill, as it was in the casino. So the tables were open, but the slot machines where people typically are, spending, in some cases hours, where every other one was kind of blocked off. And then you can see the pool. So there were a few moments while I was on board, I'm like, oof, there's a lot of people in this pool. So, we would just kind of make our way around. But again, you can see this is a typical sea day. This is, people enjoying themselves. There was some line dancing going on. There was music playing. There is some social distancing on the chairs. But again, with 95% I think on our sailing, we had 13 people that were not vaccinated. And I believe they were all children. They're really, again, it's changed since I was on a little bit more. And then I wanted to throw the contrast to the silent disco. So this was one of those nights I'm like, there is no social distancing going on.
Right. Yeah.
So it was almost like the yin and the yang, where, there are definitely areas on the ship like this that, there are people that were not adhering to social distancing protocols, but they move, they're constantly moving those people around. But you can see, there are people standing and sitting all around the deck. So for those that felt comfortable, that were able, to kind of go into the pit, so to speak. And I mean, there's a little bit more space than it shows here.
Mhm.
But again, I wanted to use this picture to display the fact that, with the protocols, with the onboard testing requirements, with the vaccinations, cruising today is very, very similar to what it was that we had all experienced previously.
And was that silent disco? Was that outside? Is that what I was seeing?
So this is in
Excited?
the main atrium, right? So right on the behind that first pole there is
Mhm.
the martini bar.
Okay.
So normally it's I think most of the time they hold it in the club,
Mm-hmm.
but they can only have so many people in the club. So we did one smaller one in the club and then a larger one on a second night. That was my first time doing a social or
Silent
a
disco.
silent disco. Super
It's
fun.
unique. It's neat.
It
Yeah.
is. It's fun. Like for me, I'm like, okay, 15 minutes. And then I just like to watch everyone
Mm-hmm.
and kind of laugh at it afterwards. From the buffet, as I had said earlier, the buffet stations, typically when you go and you serve yourself, you can see not very well here on the photo on the right that there is now staff that is available to serve you. But
Mm-hmm.
on the picture on the left is, again, just, the heightened awareness. They have such huge areas dedicated to hand sanitization. So they had this area here, which obviously was built pre-COVID,
Yes.
because again, hand sanitization has been an important element on a ship for years
Mm-hmm.
and years.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can see in the window, or sorry, in the mirror on that picture, there's actually a staff member telling everyone, please wash your hands.
Mm-hmm.
Right behind her is a Purell. So if people for some reason miss it, which I don't know how, because it's the first thing you see kind of
Yes.
going into the main
Yeah.
buffet area, then
Mm-hmm.
she's there to remind them as well, wash your hands, use the sanitizer. So they've got a few checks and balances in place from that standpoint
And
as
I love
well.
that it's hand washing instead of the
Yes,
alcohol and the sanitizer. My daughter has terrible eczema and that just burns her so much. So I
I
love,
can imagine.
yeah, like
Yes.
cruise lines, I love that they're offering the soap and water option.
Yeah.
And I think that's
Yeah. And as simple as this sounds,
Mhm.
it's hot water. So how many times have we gone into a restaurant or a buffet area here
Mhm.
and it's cold water? It's
Yeah,
never
yeah.
warm water coming out of
Or
the
not
tap.
even being able to wash pre-COVID. So
Yes.
with this
Yeah.
being set up before, this is much safer on a cruise line than you were if you were going to the Mandarin, say, or any kind of buffet
For
restaurant.
sure.
So that's wonderful. Mhm.
Now, one of the things I didn't capture in this picture, so again, normally you would go in and you'd get your plates and you would get your cutlery. So everything is pre-wrapped. They hand over your cutlery to you, they hand over the plate so that it's completely non-touch. The only thing that you end up touching is that actual plate filled with heaps and heaps of food.
Yeah.
Now, the nice thing here on the edge is a lot of their buffet areas specifically is stations. So you just move from station to station. The lovely thing about that is it's so spacious at the best of times. Certainly with 50% capacity, it's even more spacious. But you don't have those big long lineups because they do have that kind of flow through and a little bit more of that organic flow rather than the forced flow of going, down a assembly line of buffets.
Mhm. That's
From the main dining room aspect, as well as any of the alternative dining rooms, they have, again, it's, hand sanitizer to go in. They have somebody that's there. For ourselves, we weren't very comfortable sitting right in the thick of things.
okay.
So every time that we would go into one of the restaurants, the sit down restaurants, we would ask for a table off to the side, a
Mhm.
little bit away from kind of everyone else to kind of do that social distancing on our own,
Right.
and just put a little bit more space. So that was granted. There was no problem whatsoever. And, some of the restaurants, you could see them cleaning the menus. For us, I wasn't taking that for granted. So I would bring hand sanitizer, for example, to dinner with us in my little pouch, which I used to do before because my one of my bosses freaked me out once about the germs on a menu. So I always have, always,
Yeah.
but I was probably a little bit more diligent than not. And the same with, salt and peppers, shakers on the table are all cleaned. But that was my kind of comfort zone. So again, I just kind of adapted kind of what I do at home to be on board. So each of the staterooms are equipped with the Healthy at Sea little package, which came with hand sanitizer as well as a mask and some wipes. I personally brought my own wipes, wiped down the handles, wiped down the phones. But again, I wouldn't say that's anything different than what I normally do. I might have just been a little bit more diligent and done it more than once a week. The other thing that I thought was really interesting, and I don't think this is a COVID related change, but I love, you can see it there on the top, is the new process for taking photos. So instead of having those big, huge roll ups with all of the backdrops that are literally scattered all over the ship, they now have a few key areas that are a little bit more spacious, and they have green screens. So again, it minimizes the contact from the crew of, people touching things. So they just have the one screen, you pick your background. And I thought, well, isn't this a long time coming? I thought that was a really great enhancement. And of course, the great crew, as you can see here, coming back on the ship when I think this was either Nassau or St. Martin. So we didn't get off the ship in St. Thomas. I'd been there a few times, so we just enjoyed our own private yacht for the afternoon. But one of the things with the shore excursion programs is if you were a family, for example, that had an unvaccinated child, or if you are or were an unvaccinated passenger, the only way that you were able to get off at that time was to take a celebrity curated voyage. So all of those protocols are in place as well. But one of the things that struck me in all of the ports was just how unbelievably empty. So you can see here, anyone that sailed into St. Martin, that's the picture. Actually, it's both of the pictures. Normally it's a hustling, bustling port. There are hundreds, if not thousands of people that converge on St. Martin. And this is what it looked like the day that we were in port as the only ship. And one of my favorite little things to do, again, I've been to St. Martin quite a few times. I love taking the water taxi over, getting off that little pier and just going to find a little beautiful seat there on that beautiful blue water, having a bucket of beer and just chilling out. And that's exactly what we did. It's just normally 5,000 other people with us.
And then it was just you and your sister.
It was, and we met one other couple, and we were, we actually had probably one of my best times in St. Martin. It was great to go back because I hadn't been to St. Martin probably since summer 2018, if not 2019, where it was still going through a huge rebuild after the hurricane. So there's still, you can certainly still see signs of certain stores that are at that front area there that still need a little bit of work. When we were in Nassau, there was nothing open. We were the only ship in. It was probably 1,200 people that were coming. There was one spot that we could go. Even the little market, the straw market, was closed. There was literally nothing open. Again, on this particular itinerary, I've been to all of the sites, so it was just an opportunity to walk around and kind of see what was happening. But that was where we were kind of at with that. So, it's chilling when you get there and you realize just how empty these areas are, and knowing how unbelievably reliant they are on tourism, and how much, we know how hard we've been hit, let alone, people that aren't as fortunate as the lives that typically most of us that cruise do have. So it was quite shocking.
Very dependent on that.
But really kind of, my whole piece was, it's the beauty of cruise, the journey, the voyage, being on board. This is us as obviously as we're sailing away from from Nassau. The beautiful blue ocean, the spectacular blue sky and the sun, and just the joyous people that are so celebratory of being on a ship again. It was such a beautiful experience to be able to go out very early on. And I can't wait to get back on board, but I loved this picture because it just kind of encapsulated for me that entire experience. Beautiful ships in the background. I think this was the Freedom of the Seas, came in for a few hours. I think they had 600 passengers on board. So it's, cruising, is truly a viable and safe way to travel. There
Mhm.
are definitely hoops to jump through with all of the protocols and the testing and
Yeah.
the vaccination requirements. But that's what we're here to be able to guide people to truly understand. And, I'm going to give you a bit of a shout out because I know you have been working on your business to educate people through the entire 18 months, and it has not been easy. And when I went to look at your website, I
Mhm.
loved what you had written for your mission
Oh, thank
of just making sure that your role here is to empower you and to make an informed cruise travel decision. And that one word just jumped out at me because, like I said, as myself as an experienced traveler, I struggled
you. Mhm.
trying to plan. So working with an expert and working with yourself, just gives people that added leg up and added advantage of gaining all of that and the value that you bring on all of the training and the knowledge that you have garnered over the last 18 months a few times, because let's be real, it's
It
changed
does, yeah, especially at
multiple
the beginning, it
times.
was like every day something new came out. And, "Oh,
Yeah.
okay, scratch that. I didn't mean to tell you this. Let's go this way."
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We were literally boarding and protocols were changing. We didn't know if we were going to get on the ship.
Mhm.
And it's just like, super frustrating. That's why I was saying about pack your patience. And then you just realize this is what traveling is like in
That's
the
so
middle of a
true.
pandemic.
Yeah. And not
Um,
only that, I really personally, I strive to make sure that every passenger is on the right line for them. So if you want a beach day, if you want to put your feet up,
yes.
I'm never going to send you to the Galapagos. Whereas if you're somebody who really wants an immersive experience, if you want to dig right into the itinerary, then I've got a whole host of different cruise lines and different destinations that are made for you.
Mhm.
So that's kind of one of the things that I really strive to make sure I let people know. And they're like, "Oh, but I want to go on, this line ABC." And I'm like, "But based on what you told me, you're not going to have a good time.
It's
And
so true.
I don't want you to waste your time, your money, anything. I
Yeah,
want you to come back saying, 'Wow, let's go back.'" And that's
absolutely.
my
And
big part of it.
And that's the beauty. And that's why I love cruising so much. And not that it's not replicated on land, but there are so many beautiful itineraries and beautiful places around the world to travel to
Mm.
in a whole bunch of different styles.
Yeah.
If you want to eat on Versace plates, you can
Mhm.
eat on Versace. If you want a wet t-shirt contest and the muscle burly men at the pool
Mhm.
doing, I can't remember what that contest is for, you can have that too.
Yeah.
And everything in between. It's
Mhm.
it really is such a great vacation option for all ages. And I just am thankful that that I had the chance to go on, that you wanted me to come on and speak to you about that today and share that
Thank you so
information.
much. Yeah, I really appreciate it. I had at one point, this made me really feel for everybody who puts these great presentations together. I had someone cancel, and I thought, you know what? I'll just talk about one of our group cruises. Well, didn't I spend a day and a half getting everything ready and doing all that? And I thought, how many times did I go down the rabbit hole and just keep researching? And I'm like, no, no, focus, focus. Just keep going.
It's true.
So you guys put in so much work, and I couldn't do this without you. So thank you so much for putting all that together.
No problem. My pleasure.
So I
My
hope
pleasure.
everybody has oh, I'm sorry. I cut you
No,
off.
I was just nope. I was just saying my pleasure.
I hope everybody has a great week, and we'll see you next week, everybody. Bye. Thank you so much for watching this week's Cruise Chat. I know it was a little bit of a different format with meeting with Caroline from Cruise CEO, but it was really nice to see her experience when she went on the Celebrity Edge and she got to meet Captain Kate. I mean, that's just fabulous. So good for her. Next week, I'm going to be meeting with Quark Expedition Cruises. It's a brand new cruise line that I'm going to be meeting with. So we're going to be doing a brand overview. We're going to be looking at the kind of things that they offer that the other ones don't, and where they sail and their types of ships that they have. So make sure that you subscribe to our channel. That way you can see as soon as we put out a new video. I tend to put them out every Thursday morning. So make sure that you subscribe to our channel, and then you can see them the second they come out. And also, if you're listening to this on our Cruising the Waves podcast and you want to see some of the images that she shared that we discussed, head on over to our YouTube channel. Plenty of Sunshine Travel on YouTube, pardon me. And if you would like any assistance at all with any of the different cruise lines that I've met with, please reach out to me at info@plentyofsunshinetravel.com. And I would be glad to help you get on a cruise right now, because I know we all really need a vacation. It's there waiting for you, and it's safe, and they're just ready to serve you. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see everybody next week. Goodbye.